Jackson Browne's Running on Empty album was one where the music fans got to be part of the process. It was recorded live on stage, in concert, and at other points along the touring trail backstage, in hotel rooms, and even on the tour bus. It was certainly a unique and often chaotic experience for those involved in the recording. And as bassist Lee Sklar told me, Running on Empty was unlike anything he'd ever been a part of. While bands and artists are very used to the uncomfortable nature of playing new material in front of an audience that's just there to hear the hits, Running on Empty captured moments with Browne and the band where they were playing new songs that the audiences hadn't even had a chance to get on an album yet because they hadn't been recorded. For Sklar, that was just one experience of many songs and albums that he's played on across the decades. While he's worked with countless names, there were a few that kept coming up: guitarist Waddy Wachtel, guitarist Danny Kortchmar, drummer Russ Kunkel. The four became known as the Section, the 70s heir apparent to the Wrecking Crew of the 60s, and collectively, and often together, they have played on thousands of albums. In more recent years, they've acquired a new moniker, one which fits quite well with their connection to the legendary albums that they played on by Warren Zevon, Linda Ronstadt, Carole King, Don Henley, and many others, the Immediate Family. Adding vocalist Steve Postel to their ranks, they've now put out several albums. But it was director Denny Tedesco who decided to tell the story of the guys through the words of their famous employers and associates. He's certainly well suited for the task, having put out a film about the Wrecking Crew, the group of session musicians that featured his father, guitarist Tommy Tedesco. He saw the natural through line that connected that collective with what Kortchmar, Wachtel, Sklar, and Kunkel continued with the Section. The Immediate Family is a fascinating journey, one which weaves together valuable history as recounted by those who were there, and the film was recently released on DVD and Blu-ray. It continues to screen nationally. You can find further details at immediatefamilyfilm.com. You know, you have bucket list interviews, and this knocks a couple of those off the list for me personally because I've been a longtime fan of Denny's work. I forget how I first heard about the Wrecking Crew film, but I couldn't wait to see it. I think I ended up seeing it a couple of times, first via an early screener copy when it was circulating at film festivals, and then eventually I saw it here in Cleveland in a theater when it screened here locally. And many years later, the film finally came out on DVD, and it's now pretty easy to find it that way or watch it on streaming. So if you haven't seen it, you're going to want to make sure you track that down and give it a watch. Now, Lee Sklar, I said a bit already. How much do I need to say about the man and the many, many albums that he's played on? I mean, just Google Leland Sklar if you need a crash course on some of the things that he's done. I guarantee you have albums by Lee in your collection. So check out his YouTube channel, which we discussed, because he is constantly telling stories about his career and his life, and it's really kind of an ongoing chronicle of his day-to-day life beyond that. And to that end, his wife has had some health issues that are ongoing, which he's been very open about on his YouTube channel. Want to mention that because you'll hear him have to leave rather suddenly midway through our conversation because of that. All right, to set the stage for how things began, both Denny and Lee were set to join me on Zoom, and Lee was running late, which, as Denny told me, is very uncharacteristic for him. So we're going to join things in progress as Lee shows up and gets a good bit of hazing from Denny. And as you'll hear, the hazing never really stops between these two. They have a great and funny dynamic. All right, enjoy the conversation. Away we go.
So let's just start with Denny Tedesco 1, Leland Sklar 0. Finally, I got here before you.
Actually, I was waiting for this to happen. You know, I could have been here on time, but I just thought Denny really needs somebody.
You got to give me one once in a while.
See, and on the other side of things, Lee, I apologize. I did not want to be an accomplice in Denny's victory today, but, you know, I guess it was due.
It's good. Really, he's worked so hard, and I don't do shit. So, you know, it's really good just to watch him, you know, because as soon as I get back to Georgia, it's all over, and he's history again.
Exactly. You got to give me a victory once in a while. I was telling him about every time I go downstairs in a hotel, you're there.
Yeah.
When I go to you are the worst.
The radio station was great when you got there all cocky, ready. And then I had already eaten. I was sitting in the green room or had already.
I was so pissed.
Your hair looks good, Denny. Denny, your hair looks good.
Not bad.
You know, I dream of having something on top like that.
Yeah. I got a trim yesterday at a local Georgia person.
Oh, cool. Cool.
That's fantastic.
Okay, well, I got to go now. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, this is fun. Nice to meet you, Lee. Have a great one.
No, it puts a smile on my face.
So Denny, how many years have you been dealing with this unique thing with Lee? You know, like he's got all the humor.
You know what? Only since 2019. I mean, I knew Lee before. He used to always show up at these Wrecking Crew events, which was extraordinary. It would be a long line at Amoeba Records, 200 people. And Leland is like way in the middle somewhere. It's like, Lee, what are you doing? You know, he's come to see the guys. Like, come here, get over here. And that was, he was always supportive. But now I've had to deal with him on a personal level. It's kind of difficult.
It's sort of sad, isn't it? You know, you never meet your heroes.
No, I still haven't.
Wow.
You guys are well matched. We could go all day. Oh boy. Well, I'll get into this, Denny. So, as I mentioned, I loved the initial film about the Wrecking Crew. Obviously, you had a very direct link with your dad, Tommy, being part of that whole thing. And you and I were talking about this a little bit. Like, I always think about what a journey you had to even finish that film and eventually get it out into the world. So, knowing that past history, like I knew that the story of these guys was in good hands with you being the one to tell it. But as a starting point, like, what do you think you learned through the whole experience of doing that Wrecking Crew film that was helpful as you launched into this one?
Well, I think the first thing is don't put your own money into it. So, but no, the funny thing is, yes, it took 19 years from beginning to end. So there was a lot of growing period for me as a director, as a producer, and seeing what worked with audiences around the world. I realized, you know what? It's not about the music all the time. It's about the other stories, the personal stories that really resonate with audiences. You know, you could have a great doc about, you know, a concert or music or whatever, but there's more to it. And because I can't relate to them as musicians. I relate to them as a son or a friend, or, you know, I mean, we relate as a father or whatever it is, but that's where you got to make sure that you bring that into the story. And these guys are just givers. I mean, they really, and all the interviews, everybody couldn't wait to talk about these guys. And that says so much about these guys. So, you know, I think that's what I learned about these guys. I don't know if I gave you any kind of an answer.
No, I think you did. Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, on the flip side for you, Lee, like what was kind of exciting to you about doing this film, and what was, I guess, perhaps the most interesting experience for you personally that came out of it, perhaps something that you didn't expect?
Well, first off, I worked with so many of the people that were the Wrecking Crew. I worked with his dad many, many times, worked with Hal Blaine and Larry Knechtel and Mike Melvoin and Al Casey and all these guys. So when Denny did the movie, I was like completely blown away by what he accomplished with that. And I really loved going to screenings, and sometimes I would get involved in the Q&As with it because I was this kind of transitory player that got in at the tail end of them and at the beginning of what we became. So when the opportunity to do this project came along, first off, I mean, I was beyond flattered that we would even be considered subject matter for a doc, because you don't think of that. You're living in your own skin and you're just happy to go to work and have a gig. But I knew that since it was Denny that was making it, that we were in great hands because the Wrecking Crew is such a really monumental piece of work. The thing I find also fascinating is now watching the movie many times over now, there are stories being told by guys. I've been with these guys over 50 years, and I was learning new things about them because our relationship has really been a musical relationship and not hearing how they grew up and what turned them on to what they do and all that. So it's been really fun. And then the frosting on the cake is being there with audiences that respond, and they all respond in such a positive way. And, you know, not in the beginning, because like even Peter Asher talks about in the movie, he says, these guys weren't, you know, the famous musicians. These were friends of ours, and we were all at the very beginning of our career. So, no, you know, we were kind of, you know, we were like a cat, you know, spraying and marking its territory as best, you know, as it can. But as time has gone on, to have people that stop you and go, you're the soundtrack of my life. It's really it's a touching moment. And I always look at him, I go, I'm the soundtrack of my life too. I can disassociate myself from actually having participated on so many of these albums and still appreciate them as fanboy. I think about the other musicians on it who have come and gone, producers, artists who are no longer with us. And every time I hear something, I can close my eyes and I have really strong recollection. So I can go back in my mind and remember the studio and things that went on during the course of making those records. Some of it good, a little bit of it not so great. But I find it just an interesting journey, and the way that Denny has documented it is so flattering and so touching, and something that will live forever, long after we're gone, which could be any day now. So
Let's hope not. Well, I hope you're speaking of yourself and not me.
Oh no, you're a kid.
Oh.
You're fine.
Good.
I could be your dad. You know that. I mean, that's what's really kind of weird.
No.
Almost.
Hold on. Oh yeah, you could have been.
Yeah. In fact, I might be. Who knows? I mean,
I do see a resemblance. Yeah.
I see a similarity there.
Yeah.
If I look like you, we could look like a father and son.
Yeah. Yeah. If you did, yeah.
Thank God I don't.
That's sad.
Yeah. I was telling Denny as we were talking before you got here that I dig your YouTube channel. And so I think about, I came to know that there's generally one person in every group that is kind of the historian of the group. And so I think I don't know entirely your intent, and you can explain, but the YouTube channel feels, yes, like a video diary, but also like kind of a video autobiography kind of thing. So it's just like, I think that that's what is important, what you're doing with that channel and what Denny has done with this film. As you kind of spoke to some of the folks that he, all the folks that he interviewed, like you two are documenting history. And like, that's so important to get these stories out, whether it's coming from you or, coming from the folks that talked to Denny, for the film, while these folks are around to tell the stories.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's funny because Lee started it just when COVID hit. I'll let Lee tell the story, but to watch what he did from my point of view is like, man, it's killer. I mean, Lee, we should talk about this later, but seriously, you should go back and start thinking about doing a book. I know, no, don't worry about it. No pictures, but seriously, you could take those transcripts and do a hell of a book, because the stories, you've done something that is so, not everybody can do what you did. And I give Lee a lot of credit. I think he is the historian because he's the only one that's never did any drugs. So,
well, it's a fine line between historian and someone who gives a shit.
Yeah.
And I'm the guy that actually cares.
Okay, good.
The whole YouTube thing started as a complete accident. First off, if we are going to look back to so many things that evolved out of COVID when that hit, because like almost everybody I knew, all of a sudden my full date book was everything blew away like a fart in a hurricane. It was like empty all of a sudden. And you start to think, now what am I going to do? Who knows how long this is going to last, because you're hearing all this nonsense. So it'll be over in 2 weeks kind of a thing. And you're going, I don't think that's going to happen here. But what happened was we had just finished, prior to COVID, we had finished Phil Collins's last tour, the Not Dead Yet tour. And I had some guys start writing to me that had seen the show, like in Germany and in South America. And those gigs for us were all stadiums. They were like 80, 90,000 seat gigs. And they would write to me and they go, man, the show was unbelievable. It sounded great and everything, but we couldn't hear some of the details, which is obvious when you're playing that kind of a venue. So what I did was I contacted our front of house mixer, Michel Colin, who is a great front of house guy. And I said, can you send me a board mix of one of the shows? And he sent me he thought was a good show down in Adelaide, Australia. And I loaded it into my laptop. And I mean, my setup is so naive and simple here. I I'm sitting in front of my laptop right now, but what I usually do is I take my phone and I've got I mean, you can't see there, but I've got a one of those little photo sticks, one of those little sticks.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, hooked to the drawer of the desk with a C clamp, and and I'll mount the camera in it, and next to me is a Bose speaker, and I got a little bass amp on the floor. So what I did is I played around to get a balance where I could play the track through the speaker, and then made the bass a little bit louder than the track coming out of the amp, so I could play along with the song, and the bass would be the loudest thing at that point, so you could hear every note. And I thought, well, I'm just going to do the first song. The first day I did it, I did the first song. And it's funny, I look back now and I'm like sitting there talking, and it's like I'm talking like this. And I look kind of like Neil Young in the documentary. It's like it's chaotic, and I don't really know what the hell I'm doing. I'm not Mr. Techno. So I did the first song, and then the second day I did the second song. And by the third day, I had people starting to write going, man, we love your YouTube channel. And I'm going, what are you talking about? And they go, oh no, that stuff you're doing about Phil Collins. And I had no idea that doing something in that format would create a YouTube channel. I never knew how that stuff worked. I mean, I'm a huge YouTube fan. I'm an insomniac, so I can stay up all night just looking at stuff on YouTube. And it's a fascinating medium. But I got through all the songs of that show, except the last song, which I'm saving for my penultimate video. If I decide to finally shut down this channel, I can't do it anymore, I'll be doing Take Me Home.
Wow.
So that was how we closed our set. And I'll leave it for that. But after I finish all those songs, I kind of went, well, now what? I'm really enjoying this, and people seem to be liking it. And so I started digging into my own discography, which I had never done before. I never thought about what I've done. I only think about, am I working today and am I working tomorrow? Like most players are, you're living for the next gig, because the minute you finish your last gig, you're unemployed, no matter at what level you are in this business. And it has nothing to do with whether you're financially secure. You want to be musically secure. You want to have music to look forward to. And so I started digging into James and Jackson Browne and Linda Ronstadt and Hall & Oates and all kinds of stuff. Then I started pulling up all the stuff like It's Raining Men and I Am Woman. And then I started talking about all the TV shows I did with Mike Post. And then I addressed some of the Wrecking Crew stuff I was involved with. And it kind of blew my mind, because I'm like 1,640 or 50 videos into it now, and I still haven't barely scratched the surface of the discography. And now there's 243,000 people on the channel. So for me, it's really a labor of love, because I can't make any money on this channel because everything's copyright protected. So, I'm just doing it because I dig doing it. And when I was just getting ready after we finish this, I'm going to be doing James Taylor's Rainy Day Man, and I'm doing a play along.
Oh, cool.
That. Now, a lot of the stuff, as this evolved, I realized the magic of these tracks happened in the studio. And there's no way in this space where I am right now that I can duplicate that. So then I expressed that I'd be happy to tell you stories about all these things, and then be fanboy and listen to them with you, rather than trying to cop. Because like when I did Gene Clark's No Other, I think I have 4 or 6 basses on that track. They gave me almost full reign to almost orchestrate it with all kinds of different bass parts. There's no way I could do that here. So it's more fun just to kind of sit and reflect on it. And I told stories about what was going on in the studio when we recorded it. So this has been really fun. Now, the only other thing I'm thinking about maybe doing with this, other than the idea of maybe transcribing things and making some kind of book, is we do a show. We've tried to do it every year, but during COVID, it went away. And then they just had it, but I was out on the road with Lyle Lovett and I couldn't do it. So hopefully next year we do a show called We Write the Songs and it's for ASCAP at the Library of Congress in Washington. And I'm in the house band. And what they do is they bring in like 6 or 8 artists, like Randy Newman, and Lyle's done it, and Hart, and all kinds of people. And what they do is it's really ASCAP, the music publishing company, hustling all these senators and stuff to protect songwriters' rights. And so they'll tell stories about their songwriting, and then we'll do a couple of songs of theirs with the band. And I had one of my basses had a big sticker on that said "resist" on it. Now, I've never said what resist means, but boy, everybody jumps down my throat that I'm like I'm a pinko leftist commie piece of shit. Well, I could be resist Browne M&Ms backstage, but they immediately jump on it because they're so racked with guilt over the life that they've chosen. So the woman who is now the head of Library of Congress came backstage and she said, who had that resist sticker? And I'm sitting there. I said, that was me. She goes, that's fantastic. It was so great. And I want to talk to her and see if I can donate all my videos to the Library of Congress.
Oh, man.
They could just have it there if anybody ever wants to come in and look. It doesn't require a big, focus or anything, but just to have it somewhere where it could be, like it would be like giving it to Berkeley.
Yeah.
One of the colleges, just to have it in their archives. Because so many people write to me and they go, God, I love these stories. This is all so amazing. And I'm just having fun kind of reflecting on what I've been doing for 54, 55 years now straight.
Yeah.
And so I'm long in the tooth, and I look and Denny's beard's growing while I'm talking. So I'm going to let you, we need a third beard out here on this screen.
I tell you what, Denny, yeah, we'll talk after this is done about beard potential and what we can do to help you out. I think that Lee is clearly going to be the one that can help more than I can, but I've we'll see. We'll talk.
What I love, what did Lee say? What was your comment, Lee? You went from a positive to a negative over the years. It's the same beard, it's just gone white.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be brownish red, and now it's all white. Other than that, I think if I dyed it all, I'd still sort of look like I did back in the in the 80s.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's a sad comment. Sure,
you should.
Yeah, maybe when I come down. Maybe when I come down there
this week, yeah, Georgia.
You can go where you got your haircut. Maybe they can dye my hair.
Yeah.
Denny, I wanted to bring that up in part because I don't know the complete timeline, and you can tell me as far as like when you started working on this film, but like what Lee is doing with his YouTube just like illustrates to me like when you think about the archaeological dig that you go on to like start gathering up, materials to do a film like this, it's just like before you even get out of the gate, you've got Lee at your disposal with everything that's in his head, and we can go right down the line with Danny and Russ and so on. So you had so you had a lot at your disposal before you even started interviewing people outside of the core here.
Well, the problem here's how it came up. My producers Jack and Greg and Jonathan, they came to me with actually another project that went away, and they said they were bummed, and they said, what about this idea? And it was Lisa Roy, who was their publicist, that had this idea about doing it. And I said, well, I knew Leland, but I also knew all those names, and I knew they had this thing called the immediate family, local band, in a sense. I went, now that's my wheelhouse. I totally get this. And I said, why I liked it so much is it really jumps off the Wrecking Crew era perfectly, because the tie-in is with Lou Adler when he's doing Tapestry. I asked him in the first movie, I said, did you make a change? A conscious decision to get rid of Hal and Tommy and Joe and all those guys? He goes, no. He goes, Carol brought in her own friends. She brought in Cooch and she brought in James Taylor. So there was this easy, like, okay, that makes sense. And then the idea that they had a band that was called Immediate Family, that helps me find a hook. You know what I mean? Because if they were all individual guys, it's hard because now, well, why didn't I put Jeff McCall or Keltner in, or, Carlos Vega, or, I mean, there's all kinds of, or Luke. You could go forever, but there was that hook. We met with the band, and the next day they said yes. To my pitch. And then they say, Carol King could be interviewed in 3 weeks. And I literally shit my pants. Was like, oh my God, because I pitched something, but it doesn't mean I know anything.
No, those pants, by the way, are on eBay.
Exactly. And I'm hoping the success of the film will raise the price.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like do I, because it's one thing about knowing a lot. Listen, there's so many guys out there that know way more than I'll ever know about this stuff. They were real, music geeks. And, I grew up in the era, but not really, because 1971, I'm 10.
Yeah.
And so there's a kind of, my older brother was old. He was 10 years older. So I kind of knew what was going on. But I don't know this stuff. I start doing my research. I know how these guys tick. I knew from not even a musical side, but personal side, what makes these musicians tick. And I think that really made a difference. But every time I go on those interviews, I'm learning as I go along, which is kind of a drag in a weird way, because I learned something, let's say, about a Carole King session, excuse me. Carole King session
could have been in the film.
Yeah. Exactly. I can't go back to Carole. I can go back to the guys always.
Yeah.
But it just, you kept learning so fast. And it was such a weird thing, because they said Carole can be interviewed in 3 weeks. And this is in August, and by December, I had Carole, Jackson Browne, Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, Lou Adler, Phil Collins, and it kept going. And I had at least 8, 9, 10 stars of the film in the first 6, and I didn't have these guys interviewed. And what we do is we try to build a sizzle reel to get the rest of the money. And well, all of a sudden we did that and went to Sundance. We tried to pitch, there, and then all of a sudden COVID hit.
Yeah.
And everything as we all remember, it's 2020, it's March, and everything stops. And now we're all in, like, what do we do now? We got a great sizzle reel. The world's coming to an end. And, and I got a bunch of people in their 70s to still interview, and it was a reality check of what we were doing, and I said, I got to get these guys on camera. We need to keep going, or the project dies. And not, hopefully no one else physically dies, but, we lose that momentum, and we couldn't take that chance. And I slowly went out, got them and on camera, and kept going. And what was interesting is those 6 months of knowing these guys, and hanging with them at the recording session or doing this or that, I got to really know them. I think that their trust in me was, if I did them first, I don't think there would have been as much openness.
I would have.
You just watch your YouTube channel. We know that. But you know what I mean? I think that really they opened up a lot easier.
Yeah. One element of the film that I like a lot, we're familiar with kind of, I think, some of the visual tricks that a lot of people do. If you watch a lot of these rock docs, like there's the classic person coming in and sitting down as the camera's already rolling. You see that before they start talking. Kind of the variation on that, and I'm not comparing the two, is something that I love that I think really pins this film together from section to section to section. And that is how you've got interspersed just the moments where these guys are all just sitting around talking with each other. Like, that's so cool. Like, it gives you kind of like that fly on the wall type perspective. So where did that idea come from? Because I haven't seen anybody do that.
Well, the Wrecking Crew did it. I did in the Wrecking Crew with the first day of shooting in the Wrecking Crew. I had my father and Hal Blaine, Carol Kay, and Plas Johnson at a round table. And the reason I did it like that, because I grew up with guys, kibbutzing, as my Jewish wife would say, or did I say it rightly?
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's perfect. And that they were bullshit. I never saw my father go to work. I never went to work with him. I never saw him play at home. All I saw were card games and golf games and dinners and the teasing and the laughter. And I thought, if I can get that, then I'm in heaven. And I related it to Broadway Danny Rose, the Woody Allen film, where the writers and managers are talking about this guy, Danny Rose, who was Woody Allen. And they sit around a deli table in New York, and they just start talking. Yeah. And it reminded me exactly what I grew up with. And I call these guys, basically, they're musicians without their instruments. They're playing off each other. They're listening, and musicians are great with that. They're always trying to one up on each other. They're listening to each other. What's he saying? And then, and obviously there are musicians that don't do that, but they all try to step on each other, go after each other, kidding. It's just the natural thing. And that's what I love about that. I want to be a fly on the wall. I don't, it's so much easier than doing an interview,
for sure.
When it's working, it's working. And you guys, I just sit back and go, oh my God, this is heaven, and we just keep going. And within 5 minutes, if you have it or not. And then if you have to, you start throwing in some questions and, they yell at you and you come back. And
yeah, I think when you're doing a project like you have done with this immediate family film and, the Wrecking Crew film, like when you sit down for a conversation with somebody like that, you can tell within just a matter of minutes or seconds whether or not they want to be there or not. And, either that turns or it doesn't. And it's magical if it turns, but it's also just magical if you sit down and you can tell that they're actually enthused to be there. But you're walking into such an unpredictable thing time and time again when you have conversations like that for a project like this film.
Well, it's funny because these guys, I mean, like I said, these artists that came on, the biggest problem with documentaries, as we all know, is the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, how are we going to get so-and-so? How are we going to get so-and-so? Someone's going to make a call. And then you got to convince the management or whoever's, to please ask the artist. Well, there was no gatekeepers here. These guys would call instantly. Hey, can you do this, Carol, James, Jackson, or whoever? And instantly they jumped on it. And that says so much about these guys, because the artists were not just artists, they were their friends. They were all of the same age. It wasn't like when my father was working with Frank Sinatra or Brian Wilson. They're going in 3 hours, hanging with him for 3 hours or 6 hours, whatever the session is, moving on. Might not see him for months. They never went on the road with the guys. These guys go on the road with Linda or Carol or James or Jackson, and they bond. They're the same age, they're the same ilk. And I think that's the big difference of the relationships.
Lee, you mentioned, hearing stories, from some folks that you've worked with that, because you're just working, you're doing the work. They were, in some cases, stories you hadn't heard. What's a story like that you kind of heard through this film that you hadn't been aware of prior to that?
Well, I mean, it's like when Waddy talks about, when he's like this little, like 5 years old, watching, Carl Perkins on TV, and and he asks his mom, what's he doing? And she goes, well, he's playing guitar. He goes, that's what I want to do. And she goes, you're 5 years old. What are you talking about? He goes, nope, that's what I want. And then he bitches that they finally got him a guitar and it was the wrong Les Paul. He wanted a black one and he got a yellow one or something. And the way Russ talks about his brother, his older brother was a drummer, and that he sat him on his laps and put sticks in his hand and showed him, how to move. I mean, just little things like that just, it brings a level of humanity and charm to it, that because everybody can relate, like when they were kids and they wanted to play, and like most people don't follow through. But a lot of people, when they start school or something, and they have to take a music class, and they've experienced something about it. So it was great. Now, two of the things to me that people commented a lot about that were two things that Denny did in this movie that is really great is, I don't want to give everything away in terms of let haven't seen it, but the opening credits are really something special.
Super cool.
It really sets the tone for what lays ahead. And also those segments where each of us would be playing a riff, and then it would morph into the song, and people would be sitting in the audience going, what are they doing? What's that? And all of a sudden they're hearing Fire and Rain or something like that and going, oh crap, that's them playing on, it was just watching these little things that were really subtle, and they're not tricks. They're just a neat way of presenting things and laying it out to the audience. It's like a little moment of discovery for the audience. It kind of sucks them in because it's something's going on that they're kind of going, what's next? What's happening here? Rather than just having it laid out like on like a meal being put before you, rather than actually seeing any of the process of cooking.
Well, I think it colorizes it because, for people that are sitting there going, you're right. It's a great way of showing that, because people are sitting there going, I know that this guy, Lee Sklar with the beard, played on that record, but what did he do on that record? And so you see a moment like that, and it's like you start hearing the riff and you're going, oh shit, because you've heard that riff so many times. And then all of a sudden, again, as you said, like when it goes into the music, like then you've got the full picture. It's really cool.
Yeah. And the thing that's amazing, the thing that's really remarkable about the whole thing too is comprehensive as all this is, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, that tree could have been a forest when you really look at all the people that everybody's worked with over the years. It could be an absolute forest, and all the different genres that everybody's worked in and stuff. So to me, it's really a well thought out, well crafted movie that, when you sit back and you look and you go, this thing could have been 10 hours long easily. But at a certain point, you have to have the reality, I'm making a movie that it has to be comprehensive and it has to tell its story in a certain time frame and all that. And I think that's what it accomplished so beautifully in this. I mean, there's a lot of things where you think, oh, we could have had this, we could have had that. Well, I'm sure every movie that's made, the people that are making decisions about it keep going, God, I wish we had been able to put that scene in. We just couldn't do it, kind of a thing. So I think for the parameters that this was, hold on just a minute. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, no, this is not important. This is some knucklehead down in Texas that keeps calling me.
Now that knucklehead's going to know that he's a knucklehead.
Please. No, please. Absolutely.
He already knows.
Knucklehead is a term of endearment.
Yeah.
No, but
Texas is a big state.
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, I'm so like I said, flattered and proud of what Denny and the producers created here, and it's been really great to have people coming up to me, especially like this past all the touring I've been doing since the movie came out, and people come up at every gig going, man, we saw the film. We've already watched it 5 times. We just Denny and I just got together at Richard Marx's house, and Annie Lennox was there, and they were all just talking afterwards, going,
it was so much fun because it was like 10 of us. It was just our wives and a friend of mine put it together. And what was really cool is to sit in that room with Richard and Annie, and Leland worked with Richard. And it's so funny because all of a sudden, to explain to the audience who haven't seen it, the opening is this tree that's like this blooming tree. It's like with branches and leaves with all the names of the artists that they played with. And so all these names keep popping up, Bob Dylan or the Rolling Stones or James Taylor. And all of a sudden, Richard Marx names pops up. And, while we're watching this, and someone yelled, there's Richard's name. It's like, oh, thank God. I forgot. I forgot he was even there. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, it was great
so
moment.
Cool to watch it with those two people because they live this life. They live this life being on the road, understanding what it's like. And two different people, because Annie's very shy and you could see very controlled in terms of what she feels comfortable in her act, I'm assuming on stage. And Richard could go from a acoustic guitar by himself to his band and change up like that. And so they were talking about the panic of all these things. And then with Lee, I was like, oh, I wish we had the camera going again.
Yeah, that was a fun event. It was fun because Annie was sitting right down in front with her partner, and things would happen. All of a sudden, I'd see her arms going up like this. She was like totally into it. It was really sweet.
That's super cool. And Lee, you mentioned Phil. There's this great outtake in the film where Phil's talking about his long relationship with his solo band. You come in and sit down next to Phil as the two of you start to discuss your long history. It's a poignant moment for us as fans. And Phil mentions the first time that the two of you worked together with Lee Ritenour. I wondered, what your first memories are of coming across Phil's playing.
Well, I mean, I always loved prog rock, so I was a Genesis fan, and I love Gabriel. I mean, Gabriel to me is still one of the most unbelievable artists that have come out of this generation. So when I got this call from Lee to work on a track on his thing, and I show up and there's Phil, and I knew Phil from Genesis and Brand X. And he knew me through James Taylor, and he was also a huge fan of Mike Post's TV shows. So he said, oh, man, you played on Rockford Files and all these shows, man, that's incredible. And we bonded like immediately. And he asked me to do his first Face Value album. And I was committed to James Taylor at that point. And I said, I wish I could do it, but I can't. And I said, call me if you can, because I'd love to work with you. And then he called me in '84 and asked me to come to London and do his No Jacket Required album. And then the following '85, we toured for that whole year and watched his career go from playing large clubs to arenas instantly when Susudio came out and all that stuff. But that, for me, that's one of the most emotional parts of the movie for me, because when we filmed that, we were a day away from the last gig we were ever going to play. So it was pretty tough to sit there and go through it. And like when you were talking about, some interviews are hard. Phil was a hard interview at the beginning for Denny and the guys, because he really was quiet and stuff. And that's when I came in the room and sat down with him, and he opened up a whole lot more at that point, and we got some really good moments in. But just when I see us hugging, it just breaks my heart. I love the guy so much, and to know that what he's been going through physically and stuff is really hard.
It's heartbreaking. And you triggered something in me, that's something else I loved about the film. And, I think it's cool, any of these moments where we can see how much of a fan somebody is. And that was one of the really cool moments I enjoyed in the film, was Phil sitting there and talk about how I used to like see these guys' names in the liner notes. Like when you hear like a musician start breaking it down, talking about how he's coming through the liner notes, like that's when you know that you've met somebody that's one of you, that's a fellow fan. And it's cool to see that in something like this.
I think one of the funniest little moments in the thing, and I'm not sure how that was found, was when there's talking about, going, I think it might have been Peter or somebody who was talking about the importance of records. And you see this old footage of somebody in a record store, and the album they're holding is James.
And let me tell you, that's an accident. All that was an accident, because I'm just saying, I just need, literally, I said I just need footage of someone in the record shop in the 1970s, grabbing records. Lee, I didn't see that until probably afterwards. I didn't recognize the album until after we cut it in.
I know.
I glossed over this, this person grabbing albums, we cut into the film, it works perfect, and I'll go, holy shit, that person has a James Taylor album in their hand.
Yeah.
It's like a goosebump. You can't see in the long sleeves, but
you can't plan.
It is weird. You can't ask for that. I need a James Taylor, a person grabbing a James Taylor album. Good luck.
Yeah. No, that blew my mind the first time I saw that. I just went, holy crap, because it's not like new footage that somebody did to set up a scene.
No, it's not a recreation. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a trip. Really great.
Denny, I wrote down some albums that like were special records to me that Lee played on, and that made me think of what's one for you that, if you can zero in just generally with this film, just album wise, when it comes to these guys, what's an album that it really meant a lot to you to find out more about that record in the process of doing this thing?
It's Raining Men was the one he told me he fell in love with.
Yes, I did.
Sorry.
I totally did, and I still think it should have been in the film. No, you know what's funny is growing up, because a lot of this music, yes, I'm a big fan. All right, I'm a big fan, but more now than I was before.
Yeah,
because I was really into the Billy Cobham album, Spectrum. I was a jazz snob in a weird way. I was into Return Forever, all the Herbie Hancock stuff, and Earth, Wind and Fire, and all these horns, and the Billy Cobham album, Spectrum. I didn't realize until we doing my research that Lee was on that, and I went, oh wow, I was excited because I still love that album.
Me too.
It's just and listen, every album has an audience. Those albums that, like something like that, or even The Section, you can't give that to my wife to listen to. Do you know what I mean? That's my music. That's, or whoever, it's a genre that I love. And so it's not, that was special for me.
You hit on something though that like you're right. Like one of the other sides of this is the stuff that you maybe aren't as familiar with. That's the gift of like doing a project like this
Oh,
or seeing a film like this is coming across a record that you're less familiar with, that just blows your mind. That like
well,
maybe you've even seen this record around, but it's just like you never
but,
heard it until you got
but
involved.
no, that's you're right, and that's exactly where I got to go back. And the great thing is, I bought all the albums as soon as because I had to buy it for the artwork and all that. But I also started listening to the albums. I throw it on. I have the LPs still. I still listen to LPs, and go, wow, that song on the James Taylor album of and it's the third song on the B side. That's a great song. Or listen to Joe Mama with Carole King's first band, and then there was Attitudes, and it was like, oh my god, that's a great album. And then like I wasn't a big Andrew Gold fan. I wasn't into that stuff, and all of a sudden I'm hearing a Lonely Boy. Sorry, Lonely
Yeah.
Guy. That's me. That's my name. When I'm hearing Lonely Boy and I hear Waddy play his ass off,
Yeah.
and go, wow, so unappreciated, my unappreciation of what I missed. So in a weird way, I get to go back and go through all those albums and really get into it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because then you're trying to find a song, wow, what's going to work in this part, da, da, da. And the editor put leather and lace on something, towards the end of the movie. And it was like, all right, well, it's 2.5 minutes. And, Stevie Nicks people said, what are you guys crazy? You're not getting that for that. And I'm like, all right, but I wasn't even thinking about it. I didn't put it in there, and I just got used to it. So I thought, what are we going to put in there? And Jonathan, we went through a bunch of songs, and Jonathan, my producer, said, what about the Carole King song you haven't used on Tapestry? I went, oh my God, it is so beautiful. And I forgot about that song. And so certain problems can bring in the solutions are better than we had. And you're able to use that. And it made sense. And Home Again, not Home Again. What's this song that it's a Phil Collins, or is it? No, it's not. It's Crosby and Nash.
Nash.
And it's basically when Russ comes online talking about what he misses, what he felt he missed in his life is being
Oh,
home.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what
I
song
know
that
the song. I'm not coming up with the title, but I know the moment you're talking about. Yeah.
And it's like, so again, by the way, I don't hear a lyric to save my life. That is the weirdest thing. I can't, unless I'm reading it, it's very difficult for me to understand lyrics.
Yeah.
So, and all of a sudden I hear that song, it's like, oh my God, it's exactly what he's talking about.
I guess my final thing that I wanted to ask you was, one of my favorite records that I revisited earlier this year was Running on Empty. And, you listen on headphones and it takes you on that journey that I don't think you get it in the same way if you're not listening on headphones. I wondered what you felt when you first heard that album for the first time, and separately, the memory that kind of sticks with you now about the experience of being out there doing that tour.
Well, it was kind of like guerrilla warfare doing that because it was unlike any other project we had ever been involved with. I'd been done live albums and stuff before, but something about that, first off, it was all new material. So you had audiences that were hearing things for the first time. It wasn't you're playing your greatest hits for them. You're taking them on this new journey. And the section got to open every one of those shows. So we were having a ball. We got to play our asses off for the whole tour. One of the things for me that was a real poignant memory was I don't drink at all for the most part. I've been drunk like 3 times in my life, and it was just because I was like going, fuck this. I'm going to take a bottle of rum and chug it. And well, one night after that, I was like really just did not have a great night or anything, and I got hammered. And then all of a sudden, Jackson calls us and goes, let's record.
Oh.
And we were in like the Holiday Inn or something, and we get in there and we're recording. And I thought I was playing my ass off, man. I was rocking. And the next day I heard the tape and it sounded like a chimpanzee had found a bass in a room and was like beating it up. And I thought, I'm never going to drink again. This is the most embarrassing, horrible thing I've ever done. And it was a funny moment, but it was such an incredible thing because we would just work up these songs, and next thing you know, they're in the show. And some of the shows we played Robin Hood Dell in Philadelphia, which is this beautiful outdoor amphitheater, and a massive storm came through, and all of the stairs coming down through the place looked like a salmon run. It was water pouring in this place, and everybody was soaking wet in the audience, going crazy, having fun. So, it's like there's these memories that hit you that you just go, this was a cool project. I really, loved it. And not necessarily always remembering the specific songs or anything. Like we talk about in the movies, sometimes it was a restaurant in a town that you walk away from going, I got to come back and go to that place again. And then you have memories about Mud Island in Memphis, and then you've been at the Peabody Hotel and they filmed the ducks coming out of the elevator because the Peabody ducks are really famous and all this shit. But I sort of I look at this life that we've been blessed with making music, and every day is kind of a gift when you get to do this, and you try to make the most out of it and suck in as much as you possibly can, because you may never be in that place again. You may never see. I mean, the other day, Lyle Lovitz, our front of house mixer, Bruce Knight, who's incredible front of house mixer, had a massive stroke and an aneurysm, and they had like 12 hours of brain surgery on him. And the doctors all said, he really did well through the surgery. He may make a complete recovery. And then yesterday we found out he passed away yesterday.
Yeah.
And you think, I just saw Bruce,
Yeah.
a while back, and he was the healthiest guy on the tour. And all of a sudden he's gone, so you try to suck in every moment you can, because you're not guaranteed the next moment.
Yeah.
So with friends, Jeff Porcaro and I used to always say, let's have dinner away from music sometime. And we never did. And next thing I know, he's gone. Carlos Vega and I never got together socially. I mean, we were together constantly, but away from music. And there's so many like that the Larry Londons, the Don Grolnicks, the Michael Breckers they've all been a part of my life. I mean, I've saved everybody's voice messages and emails, and I can kind of sit back and read those every once in a while. And Lisa Roy, I have a whole folder of Lisa's emails. It's an incredible journey. I gotta run. So I'm getting.
Yeah, let me let you run, but thank you for the time, Lee. This was fun.
Thank you, and Denny, I'll see you tomorrow night or Thursday morning.
All right, love you.
Okay, man. Take good care. I'm glad we caught me here.
Okay. All right, see you, Lee.
I will talk about them after things. There was something I was going to tell you about the running empty.
Okay.
When we cut it together, that the whole segment on running on empty. And Jack, the first time we saw the movie, I saw the movie with, it was during COVID. So we had to test screen it. Well, first show it to the guys in the band. And that's the most nerve wracking, because you like what you see, but you don't know what they're going to see. And they were there, and Jackson was there. It was like 10 people in a little small room spread out. And Jackson said, he goes, wow, I've learned stuff about these guys I've known for 50 years that I didn't know about them. And, which was extraordinary. And then the other thing was, Waddy was teary-eyed when his, that picture of him and his mom and his brother came up, because he didn't know I had that. His brother gave it to me. And he goes, we always get asked to tell, for documentaries, to tell, their memories of other people.
Sure.
It's about another documentary, and it's never about themselves. So it was really extraordinary, emotional for these guys. But Jackson one day, out of the blue, calls me. He goes, "Hey, Denny, it's Jackson Browne." I'm like, okay. I'm like, Jackson. I'm like, Jackson Browne's calling me. Save that number. And he goes, "Hey, man," he goes, "I love the film. He goes, "I got one issue." I said, "What?" He goes, when I say talking about running on empty, where I'm talking about it being a runaway train." He goes, I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's a negative thing." He goes, "I meant that as a negative thing." He goes, "Why?" Because he goes, what it was we'd rehearse during the day and go in and like nothing. It was just never the same sometimes. And it wasn't until like the last city we nailed it. And he would, but how he said, how I looked at it in the cut, the runaway train was, it would, you know, I don't know if it was a runaway train. He said it was a train.
Yeah.
And it's so forceful.
Yeah.
And it sounded cool. So we used it, even though it's out of context. And I tried to recut it. It didn't work. So I said, is he okay with that? He said, yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. What a journey you've taken with this thing, man. I apologize. It took a while to, put this together, but I'm glad we were able to connect.
No. People always say, I love doing these things because, just hearing Lee speak again of certain things that, I didn't know.
Yeah.
They always come up something new.
Yeah. It's, I followed the odyssey of the whole Wrecking Crew thing so long. Like, it's like you were just this guy that, I was like, man, I really want to see this guy win, because it seemed like every time an update came around, it's like, well, I can't put the film out, and here's why. Like, so the latest hurdles were kind of chronicled. So when it did finally not just screen, but eventually make it out to where people could have it on a DVD, it's like this guy has seen the end of a major odyssey, and all of us have been through something like that, but you probably win.
No, I know, but the weirdest thing was, even marketing this film or talking about this film, I said to the guys, I said, you got to get our audience behind us.
Yeah.
Because just because we have distribution doesn't mean, oh, we got distribution, that's great, You got to keep spreading the word, because you want the story to be told. You want, I still get people finding Wrecking Crew for the first time. And when we did the Wrecking Crew, for those that, don't know the true story, is it took 19 years. But once I would go to every city or every town, and from Athens, Georgia to Wichita, and to Cleveland, I would get an army behind me. I would say, everybody I ever met, it could be 10 people in the audience to 1,000 people in an audience. Please tell your friends, please sign up. And I would send out those outtakes. And because I said, in every dollar that came in, or donation or whatever they were doing, because I couldn't, I wasn't selling the film. I was getting donations, Kickstarter and all that other stuff. I would pay off a label and a publisher. And we raised over $500,000, and it took how many years, 6 years, from $1 to $50,000, and it worked. Yeah. But everybody, that film is only out because of an audience. That was the only reason, not because of me. The film was made. That's what I'm saying, is the film was made. I got it to the point of being made, but I couldn't release it until I paid for that licensing of all that music.
It's a great story, man. It really is. I think that, like, a lot of people, once they got to the end of doing what you're doing, like, I mean, obviously you said at the beginning of all this, like, the thing you did with this one was you didn't make it with your money this time around. But, what you went through, what you learned, that, like, okay, it's really kind of a huge wall that you can't really get past when it comes to all the music that has to be licensed and all that kind of stuff. That would have been enough of a barrier for a lot of people to go, okay, this immediate family thing's a good idea, but it'll never happen for the same reasons that, like, I ran into all the shit I ran into with the Wrecking Crew. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't until I started paying off labels and publishers in the Wrecking Crew. Once I realized in 2010, the movie had been out for 2 years in festivals. We had a dozen awards, amazing reviews, and killer audiences. I knew the film was fine. I didn't worry about the film.
Right.
But I crossed the line. I have used every credit card possible. I've refinanced every time. And now I'm in a bad situation. Now what do? I cross that line. Do I put my little trophies, my little audience trophies, next to my most inspirational football trophy, on my shelf? That's great. But I have a house that is in jeopardy. I have a family that's in jeopardy. I have to sell this thing. I have to. I said, it's like having a property overlooking the ocean, and you got the land, you got the plans for building it, and you got it, and until you build it, and you can't sell it. And that was the thing, is I had that have to happen, and that's what I ended up doing. It was one donation at a time, and so it was good. It worked. So I don't recommend it.
No. So as we close out, what's next, man? What's next, like, after this runs its course?
I'm working on Wolfman Jack.
Oh,
And
I think I heard about that. Amazing.
yeah, and it's for anybody that's over 40 probably knows who he is because he was a personality growing up of a DJ in the 60s and 70s, always a DJ, but then he becomes famous because American Graffiti comes out and George Lucas puts him in the film, and then he does a Midnight Special. And this guy is so cool because we only know him as a personality. Do you even know his name? Do you know?
I don't. I've got like his memoir or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is Bob Smith. Can't get
Wow.
any better than that. And Bob Smith becomes Wolfman Jack in the 60s. He goes below the border. He's just playing, Muddy Waters and all this black music and soul music and blues. And he's turning on audiences from all over the world because in Mexico, the radio station was 250,000 watts versus what we had in America. You can only go 50,000.
Yeah.
So this thing was bouncing across the ionosphere from Canada to Japan. And he becomes like this cult following, and then he becomes part of Americana. And it's so cool. And what I like about this is, as my trilogy, in a sense, of music films, it's another film about family. He loves taking care of his people. He loves taking care of his family. He was a partier. I mean, you could see, between, the smoke and, smoking cigarettes and smoking pot and doing the blow and all that time and being overweight. He just partied hard, but he did his job. He took care of his family. He got through all that horrible stuff, and he was overweight, and finally, he had a heart attack. Literally, at the end of his, he did a autobiography. He walks up, he comes home on a tour promoting it, walks into the house. His son tells me, he goes, Joe, which is his wife's name. He calls Wolf Woman. He goes, Joe, I'm home, and boom, dies. And it's like, wow. I mean, and I have home videos that I said, please send me any home videos that you have. I don't care if it's 8mm, whatever you got. And they send me stuff and I go, oh my God, this stuff is precious because he's talking to the camera with no one there. And he's telling me things that I don't even know if they know how much he loved them because he's saying that literally to the camera. And I'm going, I don't. And he says at one point, this one clip, he goes, I don't know how much time I have. And he goes, but I just want you guys to know I love you so much, And it's like, and I got worried. It's like, he does live another 8 years, but it was like he knew what all of us know. We only have so much time on this earth, and you want your family and friends to know that I love you. And that was his way of telling them, and I see the tapes are killer.
Yeah.
I just need to find the next financing, and we're trying to get that going. Finish the financing, but I've already started cutting a sizzle. I'll send it to you.
This was fantastic,
And
man.
hopefully maybe I'll try to get a screening with Immediate Family in Cleveland. I'll
That'd be
try to
great.
get that going.
Yeah,
It'd
man.
be fun to there and figure a way to do it.
Well, I will let you return to
All right, man.
Savannah, Georgia. Thank you for the time here.
All right, man. Thanks so much, Matt.